Good evening, everyone. We will call the City Council meeting to order for Monday, April 21, 2014. First order of business is the roll call. Charlene.
Estes. Here. Peterson. Here. Lewis. Here. Doyle. Here. Wright. Here. Scott. Here. Nordstrom. Here. Roberts. Here. Clayton. Here. Lorente. Here. We have quorum.
Thank you. We will now proceed with our invocation. You are welcome to participate, but not required. And we have Pastor Jim Sorum from the Bethel Assembly to deliver it for us. And by the way, Jim is leaving us soon to move to Williston, North Dakota, and we want to thank you for your 14 years of dedicated service to our community.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been an honor to be here the last 14 years and serve in this community. I've loved Rapid City and I appreciate all your leadership and continue to be praying for you here. Let's bow in prayer. God, we are so thankful today for the many blessings that we experience in this country and in this city and yesterday all across this community. Communities of faith gathered to celebrate hope, sacrificial love, forgiveness, faith, newness of life, justice and mercy, those wonderful gifts that come from God. And Father, I'm just thankful for this community. I'm thankful for this meeting tonight where our council meets together and our mayor and our leaders from our city meet together with hearts to do the right thing, hearts to serve this community, hearts to sacrifice their time to make this a better place. And so, God, I ask you to bless them tonight. I ask you to give them insight, to give them wisdom, and to bless their families and bless this community. We ask that now. In your name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Jim. We're now on to the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or changes to tonight's agenda? Any additions or changes to tonight's agenda? We have a motion by Scott and a second by Nordstrom to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now proceed to the first of several awards and recognitions, and if the Ward 2 council members, Richie Nordstrom and Steve Lorente, could join me down front, along with our Veteran of the Month, Tricia Gabbert, and her 3-year-old daughter, Allison. In partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we are pleased to present the April 2014 Veteran of the Month recognition to Tricia Gabbert.
Tricia Gabbert was born in Pampa, Texas, and raised in Texas and North Carolina, living the first half of her life with her mom in the panhandle of Texas and several years with her dad in New Bern, North Carolina. She joined the military to see the world and gain an education. Trish joined the Air Force in 2007 and served 3.5 years active duty at Ellsworth Air Force Base as an aircraft fuel systems journeyman. She deployed to Al Udeid Air Force Base in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, July 2009 through January of 2010. During that time, she earned her Community College of the Air Force Associate's degree in aircraft maintenance technology. Tricia graduated this past December from the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology with a Bachelor of Science degree in interdisciplinary sciences, specializing in atmospheric sciences. Today she is working on her master's degree in atmospheric and environmental sciences. While in the school, she did a research project studying the differentiating characteristics between tornado-producing and non-tornado-producing mesoscale convective systems with Dr. Woo-Sen Koo of Goddard Space Flight Center, NASA Greenbelt, Maryland. And I know all that stuff because I watch the Weather Channel. Tricia is a member of the South Dakota School of Mines Weather Association Women in Science and Engineering, which is known as WISE, South Dakota School of Mines Veterans Club, American Meteorological Society, and American Geophysical Union. In January 2013, she presented her undergraduate research at American Meteorological Society annual conference in Austin, Texas.
In her spare time, Tricia volunteers time to the Women in Science Engineering, known as WISE, outreach projects to interest local high school girls in science, engineering, and mathematics. Through the School of Mines Weather Association, she volunteers time to community outreach with local high schools and Storybook Island. She is also an active member of the Veterans Resource Center for the School of Mines, where student veterans meet to work on homework, receive tutoring, and obtain helpful advice. Tricia feels her military experience has prepared her to be successful in her endeavors and provided her the experience to be confident and steadfast in her studies, and will continue to be an asset in future employment. Her military background has shown her the importance of giving back to the community. She feels a sense of pride of having given time in military service like so many heroes before and after her. Tricia is blessed with a 3-year-old daughter, Allison. Tricia is the most deserving Veteran of the Month, and we thank her for her service in the United States Air Force and for her dedication to the sciences. We are thankful to have Tricia as a part of our community. Thank you very much, Tricia.
Thank you for nominating me and giving me this award. I'm very pleased.
Thank you very much.
With Charity Doyle and Amanda Scott. Scott, we want to take a moment to thank you and your organization for what you do for our community. We're going to proceed with reading this proclamation in just a moment. Before we do that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Charity Doyle, who has a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been a big supporter of CASA for my time on the council, having learned about it. Before that in the community, I'd never heard of CASA or what they stood for. So there's still an awareness component, and obviously we're working on that, and we're hoping that today will help really spread the word on what this organization does. And I'm sure Scott will have a few words just to help clarify all of that. But I was asked to come and tell a story, because when we talk about taking care of children and children going through the court system, a lot of times we think physical abuse or mental abuse, but neglect is as big of a part of abuse as actual physical abuse is. And so I was asked to share a story. And the story goes as such. I've done many, many, many ride-alongs with the Rapid City Police Department, and there was one night in particular that just changed my life forever. We were called to a place where a child was unattended, 6-year-old little boy with nothing but the television to babysit him, no food in the home. Parents were inebriated and incapable of caring for this young child. And so while the police were dealing with mom and dad and all of the things that entailed, I got to play with this kid. And it was interesting, the things that, just that interaction. We took a little, have any of you seen the police stickers? They have the little badge stickers that they'll hand out to kids. And he took the sticker, but we were more interested in the back. So we took the back, made a little paper airplane out of it, about this big, and this is what we were flying back and forth across this hotel room. And we did that for probably a good 40 minutes. That was our time, and I would get him talking. When it was time, because DSS inevitably was going to come pick this child up, when it was time to pack up, it was interesting. As a mother, I'm looking for the basics. I'm looking for clean clothing. I'm looking for a toothbrush. I'm looking for, things like this. No toothbrush, no clean clothes, none of that. So we collected what we could. And at the end of it, he went and fetched the little paper airplane and put that on his basket. It was important for him to take that. I thought I could get through it. But it was important for him to take this paper airplane with him. So that about crushed me for the rest of the night. But as I was watching DSS load him into the minivan, here's what really made the impact, is he didn't even know what a seatbelt was. So, just these basic things where the parents, I'm sure they're fine people when they're sober, but are so self-involved in what they have going on that have neglected to even teach the child basic safety things. Dental hygiene, I'm sure Sam's wife would be very sad to hear that too. But, so that kind of abuse, when these children, or neglect rather, where they just don't know the basics, is something that the CASA advocates have seen many, many, many times, and get to be that person to help teach sometimes just the very basic necessities of survival. So with that, who am I?
Thank you, Charity. It's been my privilege to serve as a CASA. And we like to say, as CASA volunteers, that the best resolution is when the children get to go back with the parents. The parents get the training, they get the services, and they get their children back. That doesn't always happen. But thank you, Charity, for sharing your story. As you can tell, I couldn't share a personal story. But I would like to read the proclamation. Scott? The court-appointed special advocates, CASA, operates with the belief that every child deserves to live in a permanent, loving, and safe home. And whereas CASA volunteers provide advocacy service for abused and/or neglected children from newborn to age 18, and whereas CASA volunteers are the eyes and ears of the courts, as well as the voice of the child in the court proceedings, and whereas CASA volunteers come from all walks of life and from a variety of professional, educational, and ethnic backgrounds, and whereas anyone with the desire to protect children can volunteer, as volunteers are selected on the basis of their objectivity, competence, and commitment. And whereas I encourage citizens to become more informed as to how they can become advocates for abused and neglected children by contacting the local CASA program office. Mayor?
Now therefore, I, Sam Quaker, Mayor of Rapid City, on behalf of the City Council and our community, do hereby proclaim April 2014 as 7th Circuit CASA Program Month. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Council, and thank you all our volunteers, Amanda and all other CASA volunteers. As Amanda said, CASA stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocate, and I wish I could tell you that that story is one I've never heard before and nothing like that ever happens, but the sad fact is that happens all the time, every day. We know that there's a child in South Dakota that's abused or neglected every 6 hours. And there just aren't enough people out there to step forward and serve as CASA volunteers. We've got a waiting list of a couple hundred kids that are looking for a CASA. We have training annually, regularly. In fact, another training is coming up in a couple of months. So I'd encourage everyone that if they feel that they could give back to the community in this small way, to give us a call and see if you have what it takes to become a CASA volunteer and help an abused or neglected child in our community. Thank you.
Eric? We now have a Sustainability Award. And is Robbinsdale Entertainment here? Come on up. While Robbinsdale lounges on their way up, I want them to know that come on up, guys. I recently bowled 300. Took me 4 games to do it. Add them all together. All right.
The Sustainability Committee was formed a couple years ago on the basis of 3 real essential goals in the community. This is a little bit new, this award is, because we're focused on society in this award. The other parts of the tier being economy and environment. And Jay Pond is here, one of our members, who's actually our advocate and a big part of this award and getting it seen through. He's our ambassador for the committee.
Thank you, Eric. As Eric mentioned, we're looking at economic, environmental, but also social issues when we look for businesses in our community that offer education or enhance those definitions of sustainability. And it's in the area of social where Robbinsdale Entertainment really excels. I saw this documentary called on barbershops, and it's about the demise of the barbershop in the United States. And in it, it was an explanation of across our country we're losing third space, it's called, and that's a community gathering space aside from work and home. And in the documentary, they really identified how we need to enhance that in our communities because it's a really solid base of connectedness that we had in the past and we don't have so much now in our technological world. So anyway, Robbinsdale, 4 nights a week, has a Texas Hold'em card game. It's not gambling, it's free. And 50 to 60 members of the community gather 4 nights a week and are part of a very diverse community. And they, in fact, defined third space, which is usually defined as these characteristics. It's free or inexpensive, involves regulars, It's welcoming and comforting, and it involves both old friends and new friends. So for those reasons, and the fact that Robbinsdale always hosts fundraisers throughout the year for people involved in personal emergencies, and they also have a free children's bowling program in the summer. Those are the things that we looked at in making this award. So I'd like to give this plaque from the Sustainability Committee to Steve Fueling, the owner of Robbinsdale Entertainment. Thank you, Steve.
On behalf of myself and the 50 employees at Robbinsdale, I really want to express how much this means to us. We go out of our way here, as the committee came down, we go out of our way to make sure that social atmosphere in our city is there. Like Jay and Eric and Denise, also part of that community, they came down. We were super, super excited when these guys came down. And I'm not going to go into a long spiel, but they got to see everything from the poker tables back to a casino, back to bowling machines put in the 50s. So a lot of diverse things throughout that building. We have 3 businesses in there, but we have everything from the little kids bowl free in the summer program, all the way up to the seniors that come in and play cards every day. So if you get a chance, stop in and see us. And I'll tell Sam he'll have to come down and work on that 300 game. So thank you once again. I appreciate it. Thanks.
On my way back up here, a couple of the council members were poking fun of my bowling game. I've improved over the years. When I first bowled in high school, my first score of my first game was a 41. True. All right. We'll now proceed with general public comment. We do not have any general public comment forms. Have I missed anyone? Under general public comment? Oh, we do. We'll go to Deb Jensen and Lisa Modrick. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Quaker and members of the City Council. My name is Deborah Jensen, and I am president of the Mount Rushmore Row Group. I'm here along with Treasurer Lisa Modrick. The Mount Rushmore Row Group consists of businesses, nearby neighborhoods, and of course, interested citizens. We are here tonight to say thank you to you, Mayor Quaker, and to you, our City Council, for your continued support of the revitalization of Mount Rushmore Road, a vital corridor for commerce and tourism. Mount Rushmore Road carries upwards of 30,000 vehicles a day to businesses, including our medical facilities. It's an important entrance, inviting visitors to our beautiful downtown, and is certainly a gateway to Mount Rushmore and to our very magnificent Black Hills.
We're also here to introduce you to Cone Man. In anticipation of our construction over the next few years, Cone Man will be our mascot. She is positive image to show there is no reason to fear the cone zones. Cone Man will attend various events in the next few years. It'll include groundbreaking ceremonies and including when we finally do start that construction project on Mount Rushmore Road. You'll see him her summer during our Thursday downtown events, handing out information all over the place, just places where we teach people not to fear the cone, because the cone may represent a business that needs to survive the construction as it comes. It is all to encourage folks to continue using and enjoying Mount Rushmore Road. We want you to visit our businesses and shops, and we want to make sure you never fear the cone zone. We have also provided all of you with our brand new business survival guide. This is thanks to the Rapid City Chamber of Commerce, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Burge Travel, and Robert Sharp and Associates for their contributions. This booklet is an easy and helpful guide for businesses before, during, and after construction. We are very proud of this guide, and businesses along Mount Rushmore Road are already using it. We anticipate this will be used as a template for all other construction projects.
So you can see the Mount Rushmore Road Group is pretty excited about what's going to happen on Mount Rushmore Road, we hope very soon. But also, the Mount Rushmore Road Group would also like to give thanks to Terry Wolterstorff and his staff, and Brett Limbaugh and his staff for their encouragement and their help all along the way. We look forward to construction beginning yet this year. We hope summer or early fall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do not have any additional speaker request forms for general public comment. Have I missed anyone? Okay. We will now proceed to public comment for items 4 through 46. Public comment is now open for items 4 through 46. I do not have any speaker request forms for items 4 through 46. Have I missed anyone? Public comment is now closed for items 4 through 46. Any council members like to remove items from 4 through 46, please do so now. Okay. Alderman Wright would like number 8
and 41.
And 41. 8 and 41. Anything else? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the balance? Motion by Lewis, second by Laurenti, to approve items 4 through 46 with the exceptions of 8 and 41. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 8 is approve updated recommendation from the Water Advocacy Task Force. I apologize for mispronouncing words here. And my motion is to approve the updated recommendation.
We have a motion by Nordstrom and a second by Scott. Any discussion? Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
I just want to emphasize this as being a very, very important process that's being undertaken by our Public Works Department, and it's a beginning step. Shortly, we're going to adopt the comprehensive plan for the City of Rapid City, and part of that is being able to maintain and upgrade our infrastructure so we can meet their needs of the future. And this is one of those elements, and I look forward to it. I think the community needs to be involved and support our city and the efforts in that area. Thank you.
We'll go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott, also on item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Mr. Wolterstorff a question?
You may. Please proceed.
Thank you. Terry, as we discussed this morning, what's attached to the agenda is a suggested recommendation. Can you kind of fill us in on what you envision will happen after this motion is approved tonight?
I certainly will. Thank you for the question. The recommendation really spells out really a roadmap for the Public Works staff as far as bringing forward recommendations. Already next week at Public Works, you'll see a recommendation come forward that will address the need for the master plan update for the water system, and also the rate study, which will follow directly after that. We'll actually bring both of them forward at the same time, but we certainly are not going to wait. We're going to bring these forward because we need to move forward to make sure we are supplying the water that we need to for our community.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Mayor. I yield the floor.
Before we proceed to the vote, I want to take a moment to thank the chairwoman of our task force, J.P. Dunapin. Thank you for your work on this over the years. You started working on this in 2007, and asked you again to help us dust off this study and bring it forward. We appreciate your work. So thank you. Would you like to say a few words at all? No? Good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on item number 41, and I understand that that item is going to be withdrawn. So let's read that into the record. Go ahead,
Okay.
Chad.
To be withdrawn anyway. Okay. So. Okay. Well, he wants to speak.
Go ahead and read it into the record as it's listed in the.
Item number 41 is to approve the request from Rushmore Plaza Civic Center Board of Directors for monies not to exceed $50,000 for additional wheelchair accessibility in the Barnett Arena, with funds coming from the Vision Fund. And I move to.
Go ahead and yield to the floor, if you would.
Fine, I'll yield the floor.
Okay. We'll go to the chairman of the Civic Center Board, Dr. Jeff Bailey.
Good morning, or good evening, Mayor and council members. Last week I came before Legal and Finance to request $50,000 from the CIP fund to offset expenses related to the installation of a wheelchair lift to open access for additional seating within the Barnett Arena. This was in response to recent complaints regarding limited wheelchair seating in the currently designated area at select events. While we knew that installing a lift to the balcony would be a short-term fix, we also became increasingly aware that doing so might exacerbate the situation. As I've described to the council on previous occasions, mitigation of the known code infractions is something like peeling back an onion. There's no question that the compliance issues within our Barnett Arena are very, very complex. Let's face it, if these issues could be easily resolved, they would have been done a long time ago. Based on the mounting trepidations expressed over the proposal to expand wheelchair seating in the south balcony of the Barnett Arena, the board of the Rushmore Plaza Civic Center respectfully withdraws our previous request for $50,000 in fund to install a lift. But let me assure you that this is not a matter of indecision. But it's one that's based on a sincere desire to correct deficiencies 4 decades in the making. A formidable task, to be sure. All of us have a genuine interest in a municipal facility that is free of barriers, one that everyone in our extended community of service can fully enjoy without with unfettered ease of access and accommodation. Our ultimate desire will be to provide accessible and reasonable accommodation to each of our patrons, but it's equally important that we do so without infringing upon our duty to also ensure life safety within our facility. Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
And Jeff, I understand that this item is on the agenda already for tomorrow for continued discussion.
It has been for the last several meetings, will again tomorrow, and I foresee it is in many meetings to come.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll go back to Chad Lewis.
I'd like a motion to acknowledge the withdrawal.
Second. Okay. We have a motion to acknowledge the withdrawal and a second by Jerry Wright. Any further discussion? Alderman Wright.
That's it.
No. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Bailey. We are now on non-consent items 47 through 53. Public comment is now open on items 47 through 53. We will proceed first with a comment from Jamie Martin on item 47, which is the texting ban, ordinance 5988, which is up for second reading tonight. Good evening, Jamie.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, and the council members. My name is Jamie Martin, and I first of all want to thank you. I just heard that if this passes, that it'll be banned for first offense, and it's really, Rapid City needs to go above and beyond what the state has decided to do. I lost 2 children in 2007, and 2 months later we did find out that my 16-year-old was texting. So for years, I let it go. I think every year, oh, the state's going to pass it, it's going to pass it. Well, after this last year, they didn't. I met with Craig Teason and just spoke with every legislator to find out the opposition towards it. And it was amazing to hear how they were opposing it, and just, it was just ridiculous. So I'm glad that they at least came to some agreement on a ban of texting and driving, but to have Rapid City be the first to just say it's a first offense and we're going to pull you over if you do it, because it's not a matter of if, it's when. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll now proceed with a couple of speaker request forms on item number 50. Item number 50 is a request to reconsider the downtown parking lot as presented on January 28 at the Public Works meeting. And we'll first go to Steve McCarthy on item 50.
Steve, I think is a little
Okay. Would you like to go first?
I'd rather have Suzanne.
Hey, you're standing up, so your form is next, so we'll go to you next. All right. No, you don't.
Here he is.
We'll recognize Steve McCarthy on item 50. Good evening.
Good evening. I just stayed home and had a little supper before I came, so hopefully you guys can get home before midnight and enjoy your dinner too. I'm here to talk about the Friends of Rapid City Parks and what we care about in this city, and that's our parkway. It's just a wonderful, wonderful attribute that this town has, and I think it's one of the greatest attributes of this town, and we spent the last 8 years trying to defend it. And I know that downtown parking is a problem, and we want to be part of that solution too. But we don't want that solution to be at the expense of our wonderful park system. So I would ask you to consider some other options, and I think Councilman Wright brought some options up today that need to be investigated. But let me talk to you about one option that came up, and it's not the answer to your problem, but there are options. This building has more employees in it than any other building probably in downtown, and all of those people need parking. You also own the largest surface parking lot in Rapid City that is totally unused, that's 2.5 blocks from here. Now, maybe we could put those two together. I'm talking about the Journey Museum. You really need to go over there and look at that parking lot. I thought maybe there'd be 100 parking places in it. And I stopped counting on Friday at 300. That took me a while to count to 300. What didn't take me very long was to count the 5 cars that were parked there in the middle of the day on Friday. So we have this asset, a parking lot, the largest parking lot in Rapid City. How can we use that to the best advantage of the city? Maybe, just maybe, we could take the 50 vehicles that are parked on the other side of, all the white vehicles on the other side of 5th Street, and park them over there, your employees' cars and trucks that they need to use every day, and maybe that could free up space. I don't know. But what I really want to caution you on is, before you go into what I think is sacred ground, it's a memorial to the people who died in the flood, there are some other options. That's just one, and I don't know if that's the right option. But if you own the largest parking lot and you have the largest number of employees who need to park, and it's a 5-minute trip between there and here, then I would encourage you at least to take some time before you make a decision that's too quick. I want to thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Steve. And we'll now go to Suzanne Martley while Don Frankenfeld recovers from his case of stage fright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Suzanne Martley. I'm Executive Director for Friends of Rapid City Parks. Just wanted to reiterate some of the concerns that we expressed in writing, but I'm afraid that your spam blocker saw all of my attachments as a danger. So many of you probably didn't see those, and I apologize for the download of massive amounts of information. But the thing I did want to talk about was the promise that was reached between the school board and the city council in 2009 that had to do with the swapping of the footprint of Central High School in the park area. At the time, there was a question of whether we were going to have to go to Pier to change the law, to remove dedicated parkland from the park, or change the Central High School expansion plans, or go to a public vote and maybe not even have a new Central High School. There was quite a lot of consternation. Fortunately, a lot of creative people spent some time, much of it behind closed doors, and so I apologize for not being able to document the exact conversation because there were legal issues on the table. But the promise that was made was that if Central switched the plans and put the gym in the park land and the science wing on the north side, and then gave back the tennis courts, which were no longer needed, to the city park, that was a fair trade. I tried to send you the documentation on that, and not all the documents went through, but I believe you'll be hearing from former school board members who can attest to that history. So we, as Steve said, we don't disagree that there are parking needs. We just don't want to see them at the expense of the park. And the return of the tennis courts to green and permeable soils as part of the Greenway has been on the docket for a long time. The restoration of West Memorial Park, beautification plans have been on the books for quite some time, and they never seem to make it up the priority ladder in the Vision Fund. So we hope that we can all find some way to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. And we'll now go to Don Frankenfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me that recovery opportunity.
You're very welcome.
I'm Don Frankenfeld from Rapid City. I'm also a board member of the Friends of Rapid City Parks, and like others who have spoken, I'm strongly opposed to the idea of making any further incursions in our park system, albeit for a noble purpose. This time the purpose is to accommodate the undoubted needs for parking in Rapid City, South Dakota. Susan has talked to you about the promise, and I think that's probably the most important argument that could be made. There was a commitment. If you haven't received the letter from Susan Nolan, I'm sure you will, a member of the school board, who I think makes it clear that a commitment was made to turn that tennis court and the attendant parking lot into green space. That's what it should be. That commitment has been standing for so long that it apparently has been forgotten, and we can't let that happen. I spoke to the Public Works Committee last week about the legality, and I think I won't reread the law, but I'm happy to do that if anybody asks me. I've got it with me. The law clearly requires that park land be used for park purposes. The word, by the way, is solely for park purposes, not partly, not, oh, by the way, it might benefit the park, solely for park purposes. It's illegal to do anything other than that. And even Mr. Lundeen, who I think took exception to some of what I said last week, didn't argue that it's legal to do this. He merely argued that the law, if it's a law, has been broken in the past, and therefore I guess that excuses breaking it again. He talked about 3 instances where parkland was subject to joint use agreements without a vote. I think because no one made the issue a live issue. There's a 4th issue too, and that would be the Rapid City Central School, which almost certainly was in violation of the law, even after the rotation that took place. Steve McCarthy and I hardly ever argue. I just say, yes, Steve, and that's the end of it. But in this case, when the school rotated their land, he and I disagreed about whether that so-called recreational property really fit within the ambit of the law. I didn't think it did. Steve, who has been, among other things, chair of the school board, was more sympathetic and thought it was a time for a compromise, and the compromise was made. So in the past, we've not been very careful or very diligent about protecting what I think is our most important legacy in the entire city of Rapid City. I think it's time to do that. And the law requires it. You can exempt yourself from the law by a public vote, but only by a public vote. And I hope you are mindful of that as you vote on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. We do not have any further speaker request forms on that item. We'll now proceed with 2 speaker request forms on item number 51, and this is the Canyon Lake project. And we'll first go to Tim Rogers, the West Dakota Water Development District. Good evening, Tim.
Good evening. We have a technical person to operate the...
Paul, you want to help us out in the back there?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Tim Rogers. I'm from Rapid City. I'm representing the West Dakota Water Development District tonight, and also a group of concerned citizens that were put together to evaluate the Canyon Lake sedimentation removal project. I'll get to the handout here in a second that I got up on the sheet, but what I wanted to talk about a little bit was the Canyon Lake project itself. It's been 15 years since the sediment's been removed from the lake. It's if you've gone through and walked by the lake recently or the last couple of years, you've noticed a huge sediment buildup in the lake, which also creates a big algae bloom and seaweed bloom in the lake, which makes it really, really difficult for recreational use fishing, and it just looks aesthetically unpleasing. And Canyon Lake basically serves as a stormwater retention pond. I work with the industry of Black Hills Corporation, and we have stormwater retention ponds, and that's what basically Canyon Lake is. It's getting full, and it needs to be maintained, and that's one of the things we're here to talk about tonight. And I'm going to throw out some numbers here in just a second. I wanted to recognize the working group that we kind of put together with West Dakota. We wanted to get a group together with all the people involved in the project that and had concern that we knew, and get some technical people involved as well, including myself, our executive director, Denise Livingston, people from the Fly Fisherman Club, Eb Hoyt and Jim Hawk. We had members from your staff that were very, very helpful in assessing what we needed to look at and what to do. Terry Walterstorff, Keith Johnson, Claire Schroeder. We also had the contractors that are working on the dam, because this last fall the project was supposed to coincide with the reconstruction of the dam, but fortunately and unfortunately for Storm Atlas delayed that. But that gave us the opportunity to go and evaluate what we were really doing with the sediment removal. And that group got together and we identified areas in the lake that to remove sediment that was going to be most useful for public use. And the working group came up with a good plan. I think Ev showed it the other day at the Public Works. He might be showing that again, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish to get better use out of the lake. The West Dakota Water Development District, I'm not sure if you're aware of the function. It's South Dakota legislature developed districts throughout South Dakota, and we get a mill levy tax, and we get funding through that mill levy tax. and our purpose is to promote and participate in projects, water projects in our designated districts. That's kind of where I'm involved right now. My predecessors at West Dakota had the foresight to, they understood that we needed to remove the sediment, and they started setting money aside. And we initially set aside $100,000. You can see up there on this is kind of our funding, financial resources for the project that we outlined with our working group. The city of Rapid City, that's actually, that value is $39,000. They had left over from the initial project to put in the bypass at Canyon Lake. And I just rounded that off to $40,000. So we got $140,000, and we need $260,000 to complete the project. West Dakota, as I'm the chairman of that group, and this project's in my area, I went to them and said, you know, we need to contribute more to this. And they said, fine, Tim, if we do contribute, we want anything we contribute is matching funds with some other entity. And I said, yeah, that's fair. So that's what we have another $50,000 on the table for this project. Black Hills Fly Fishermen have contributed another $10,000 match. We didn't do this by design, but we're requesting tonight is $60,000, and that would be the matching amount. That's just kind of how it worked out and what we got funded. So what we're here tonight to do is request $60,000 match by the city. So, and that's
Thank you, Tim.
Presentation. Thank you.
And we'll now go to Ev Hoyt. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'll pick up where Tim left off to show you that we have an opportunity now to do a better job of cleaning up Canyon Lake. And this was a 2012 project that passed this council, though none of you were here then, in 2005. And it was funded essentially at $920,000, $400,000 from Game Fish and Parks, $400,000 from the city of Rapid City, $100,000 from West Dakota Water Development District, and $20,000 from Black Hills Fly Fishers. The first phase of the project was to build the bypass so that the inflows to Canyon Lake could be controlled when the lake needed to be maintained. At that time, we didn't know for sure that the dam needed to be replaced. So that was an entirely separate project. Of course, it's very handy now that we have that bypass, and it was actually tested last fall before Storm Atlas, and water was being diverted through that tube into the park system and then out into the creek below the dam. So it works. But we spent a lot of money on that part of the project. So now is phase two, cleaning out the lake. The city went to bid with $140,000, $139,000 to remove only 12,000 of the 35,000 yards of silt, cubic yards of silt that are in the lake. We're suggesting, and they proposed to clean out the silt in the two blue areas. So there's 12, essentially, if you follow the columns on this side, you'll see that they bid 11,350 cubic yards to be removed at $11.65 a yard. We're suggesting that really to do an adequate job for Canyon Lake and to make the silt removal effective for public use, that the yellow areas should be done. In other words, another 8,500 cubic yards at essentially $100,000. Total project cost then $260,000. So we have matching funds, as you'll see. We have $199,000 in funding that's available for this project. But we need the $60,000 match from the city in order to proceed to remove the silt in the yellow shaded area. That's the area adjacent to the walking path as you walk around the lake. So that's our purpose. We've worked with Terry Wolsterstoff's staff and with Jeff Biegler in briefing them and involving them in this discussion. So we think for $60,000 more, with the match available, we'll be able to do a decent job of cleanup of Canyon Lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ev. We do not have any additional speaker request forms on these items. We're dealing with items 47 through 53. Have I missed anyone? Last call. Seeing none, public comment is now closed for items 47 through 53. We will proceed with the reading of item number 47. We'll go to Chad Lewis. Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 47 is a second reading of ordinance 5988, an ordinance to prohibit certain use of handheld electronic wireless communication devices while driving in the city of Rapid City by adding section 10.12.40110, of the Rapid City Municipal Code. I move approval. I'd like to retain the floor.
We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Roberts, and you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And once again, I've said this before, but I'm lucky enough not to have an opponent this year when I run for re-election, but I have stood on the corner and watched people driving through those intersections, and I can guarantee you there are people texting all over the place. They're not checking emails, they're not driving down their number, they're texting and they're flying through there. And you don't have, driving a car is a privilege, and so to say that it's some sort of violation of your rights, and you shouldn't be able to text. You can't drink and drive. It's obviously, and I don't have any evidence to show it personally, but I know there's a lot of evidence out there now mounting that it's very dangerous to text and drive, at least as much as drink and drive. So I think that any opposition to this is kind of a little bit, it's your right to oppose it, but I just don't think it's justified at this point. I think that we really need to think about, this is just one of those things that makes a little common sense, and I really hope everybody does continue to support it. Thank you.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment with Ms. Martin. She's not here now, but I just think we have the best citizens ever, that she's turned this painful incident in her life into a positive to try to work toward banning texting and trying to just turn her misery to help save the rest of us from some potential misery. And it's just a real inspiration, and I think that's what I love about Rapid City, because we have very inspiring citizens. So thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to commend the chief on this. I know he's going to have a difficult time enforcing this, but it's something that needs to be done. 2 years ago, I did an interview with KOTA Radio opposing texting and driving, and I'm glad to see this came through. So I just want to commend you, Chief.
Thank you. Quick question before we proceed to the vote, and this is for you, Charlene. So this will hit my desk tomorrow. I will sign it, and then tell us what the process is from there. When would it go? When would it be published, and when would it go into effect?
Should have forewarned me. It will get published on Saturday.
Okay.
And it becomes effective 20 days after publication. I believe that was May 16th, something like that. I got a call from KOTA this morning. If they're here, maybe they can give me the dates exactly.
Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. 48. Chad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 48 is the first reading of ordinance 5986, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for a rezoning from low-density residential district to public district for property generally described as being located at 818 Anamosa Street. I move approval.
Motion by Lewis, second by Laurenti. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 49, Richie Nordstrom. Item 49.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 49 is a request by Davis Engineering Incorporated for Arlene Murphy Estate, Dennis Murphy, personal representative, for a preliminary subdivision plats for several lots and blocks of the Murphy Ranch Estates, generally described as being located east of Reservoir Road and south side of Longview Road, and I move to approve with stipulations.
Second.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 50, Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 50 is a request by Destination Rapid City to reconsider downtown parking lot as presented at the January 28th, 2014 Public Works Committee. And Mayor, I have a motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The motion is as follows, that the City Council directs city staff to work with Destination Rapid City to develop a plan and recommend funding source or sources to restore and repair the existing vehicle parking lot at Mount Rushmore Road tennis courts, including lighting under the Mount Rushmore Road Bridge for free public parking for Legacy Commons and other uses as appropriate, and to present their findings and recommendations to the May 13th, 2014 Public Works Committee and on the May 19, 2014 City Council meeting. That's my motion, and I may need to hold the floor if I can get a second.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Wright. Richie, you still have the floor.
Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Sefner has a presentation to give us before I ask any other questions, if I may.
Okay.
Mr. Sefner?
Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you, Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Can we bring the camera up, please?
Paul, can you bring up the camera for us?
I must admit, to introduce myself, Dan Sefner, Destination Rapid City. I'm a little disappointed that Mr. McCarthy already had dinner because I kind of expected him to buy tonight. So I am a little disappointed, Steve. What we're looking at here is the proposed lot, the proposed area as we see it today. As we move forward, here's our parking lot. I think I mentioned at Public Works that this year I celebrate 40 years here in Rapid City, which has a lot of impact and a lot of value in our life and in my life here. So as we take a look, this is what we're looking at today. This is the tennis courts that we're looking at now. It has been stated that this has been on the agenda or been on the docket or been thought about and talked about for many, many years. We've heard that several times. And still, this is what we look at. It was also stated that there's 30,000 cars a day that drive by here. Tonight, that was stated. What we're looking at here is an area that definitely is blighted. Our original plan for this was 400 spaces. In consideration of Friends of the Park, and I understand it very well, we moved this thing down to 269 spaces. This area roughly covers about a half an acre more than what you're looking at the blighted area today. I personally understand the flood issue. My sister was in the flood, lost everything she had. I am very aware of the sensitivity of the flood and the green space. We have roughly 1,000 acres of green space. We're asking for about a half an acre. Now, Saturday, Extravaganza at Main Street Square had probably somewhere over 500 strollers. We're talking 500 strollers. Moms, dads, kids. Let's talk about Legacy Commons Playground. Let's talk about a public space. In that parking area, it's 2 minutes to park your car there, mom, dad, 2, 3 kids, go under A Street and go into Legacy Commons play. This is a safety factor. In brief conversations, and I might address the chief here for a moment, how safe is that lot and how safe is it under the bridge? If I may ask, Chief?
Well, it's relatively safe.
When I walked underneath the bridge, it was completely pitch black. I did it 2 weeks ago from a concert at the Civic Center. Completely black. We know what the parking lot is. It's a turnaround. There's garbage, there's beer cans, there's other cans, there's things laying there all the time. This Legacy Commons playground will be something in Rapid City that it has never seen. There will be thousands and thousands of children and visitors that will come to Memorial Park and enjoy it every single day. There's roughly 3 acres that we are using. We are adding trees, we are adding beautification, we are not taking away from it. We are adding to it. The walk to the Civic Center is 5 minutes and 49 seconds. This is not a fast walk. This is a stroll. When we get a new arena someday, next year, next month, or in 5 years, this is additional parking for that also. This area is not just for one thing. This area is for several things. Main Street Square, we know, is very busy. You know, I made the statement to Mr. Frankenfeld, and he said, gee, Dan, you're quite a salesman. You don't have to be a salesman to talk about something you believe in. And this is something we believe in. Main Street Square was something we believed in. And it's taking care of improving itself. It is making a difference in our entire community. So if we get a little shuttle service from time to time, doesn't have to be every day, we can take a look at that from that area. If there's a big event, summer nights, for example, stock show, major events, maybe we can shuttle people in the winter if it needs it. This fits not only one area of our community, it fits several areas of our community. There's safety issues. There is a park purpose. We talked about a park purpose. This is a park purpose. It's a huge park purpose. I know one thing. If you do nothing, no one will ever object. If you do something, some people will. I stand for questions.
Here. You still have the floor, Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, Dan. And I know you and I have had several conversations about this, and I've also visited with staff. And before I get to those comments, I just want to address a couple of things for the Friends of the Rapid City Parks, is that we are still looking at other options. Your suggestion for the parking lot, you describe it as the Journey Museum parking lot. I just want to be clear in my mind that it is the parking lot east of the Civic Center and not next to the Journey Museum. Am I stating that correctly?
Richie, the parking lot I'm talking about is the parking lot that's north of the Journey Museum.
Steve, if you could use the microphone, please.
It has 300 spaces in it.
Okay.
If you could repeat his answer for the
Sure. And Steve, I just wanted to repeat what you just said so the audience can hear what you did say, is that you were pointing out it is the parking lot north of the Journey Museum, behind the Journey Museum, and you counted approximately 300 parking stalls there.
Steve McCarthy from Friends of Rapid City Parks. Yes, I went over there last week after the meeting, and I counted every spot there. There's bus parking, and there's some handicap parking, but there are two that I'm convinced are the largest surface parking lots in Rapid City. One of them has 100 spaces, which abuts the building, and behind that, there's a parking area with over 200 spaces in it.
Thank you. And Steve, just to clarify that the Journey Museum is also, and forgive me, not just the Journey Museum, it's the ATA folks that are looking at that grounds as well to utilize that grounds. So that parking lot is, shall we say, in suspension right now because of the future planning for that parking lot. So I appreciate and applaud your idea in bringing forward that concept. But I would also like to include the thought process, and I'm not recommending this to be tonight, but including the Civic Center parking lot east of the Civic Center. Now, I'm going to make this confusing, but that's for a future conversation, so I'm taking you up on your concept to do that parking in the Civic Center parking lot. But that's not part of the discussion tonight. So I want to thank you for those suggestions and those other options.
Well, just to clarify that just a little bit.
Yes.
Mr. Seffner just brought up that within 2 minutes you can park where the tennis courts are and you can be at his wonderful Legacy Commons. The Civic Center parking lot, what we call the stock show parking lot, is the same distance from Legacy Commons. It's used 1 week a year, And maybe that's another option that we need to look at, and I would encourage the council to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, just making sure that everybody understands that Journey Museum parking lot has got a hold on it now because of the ATA commitment that we have committed to those folks for that parking lot. So that's also in the discussions as well. The other area is, just to clarify with Suzanne Martley, is that I did receive all of your information and had a chance to read all of that information, excluding the extraneous minutes from the school board. So I did get all of that information, and it is also linked to the agenda item. We are also looking at the need for, and again, I'm probably confusing the issue, but we are also looking at green space farther east, downstream, shall I say, of the city, within the city limits, but enhancing that green space. So that is being looked at as well. And I totally understand, Mr. Frankenfeld, I totally understand the agreement that we have between the school and the city as far as the use of the tennis courts. And I appreciate you bringing that forward and reminding us. But I also just want to make sure that my motion is that it is for public parking. It's not designated or going to be specific for any particular business. It is not meant to be for any one specific industry or anything like this. This is public parking for parks for the city of Rapid City. That may include the Legacy Commons. It may include the Civic Center, should we get that expansion on that. So right now, my motion is to send this back to staff so that they have an opportunity to take a look at what needs to be done with this area, because in my opinion, this is a very blighted area, and with perhaps, in the conjunction with the I-190 corridor coming through, we can also do a beautification in conjunction with the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Just some possibilities that these items are on discussion, but I just want to reemphasize that it is for public parking and not any specific designated parking. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you, Richie. We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the 72 flood, I'll go on record of having actually been there and getting live people out that night and doing the other part the next few days afterwards. So I too have a very personal and deep soul meaning to protect our floodway. What's before us this afternoon is, or this evening, when Dan brought this to us the other day, they're reaching also for solutions to meet their needs in the Legacy Park. And I know that the Friends of the Park are prepared to defend their ground, and great. We have an issue of completing a project that's been on the dream sheet, if you want to call it, for years, as you've brought out well. But the intent of this action today is to repair an existing parking lot without really changing the use at all. And it would give us some additional safe, repaired parking to support the free parking that we needed for Legacy Park. It could be also used for other reasons. It's an investment. It's something we built probably 35, 40 years ago. And we've allowed it to become in horrible condition. We need to repair it, and that's what this motion does. For the rest of it, I think the additional 184 spaces and the stormwater retention and the beautification, I think we're going to need to do some more work because we obviously have some differences of opinion. But I think we could proceed with this action tonight, repair an existing facility that we have that's in horrible, disgraceful condition that can be used for Legacy and other uses, and we can look at the rest of it as a separate item and in a concerted and orchestrated effort. So I would ask support of the council to support the motion that was made, and we'll study the rest of it as we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wright. We'll now go to Alderman Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure to address this question too. I apologize. I didn't see Public Works. What was the actual motion that was made at Public Works? Can anybody clarify that for me?
I believe it was taken to the council without
Without-
recommendation.
Okay, without recommendation, okay. Okay. Well, in that case, Mr. Sefner, I have a question for you, sir. Approximately how much money would it cost to resurface the existing 85 parking lot spaces that are currently there, and is that something that Destination Rapid City is prepared to fund?
We had a couple different proposals that were looked at, somewhere between 80 and 110,000, depending on how much work needed to be done.
Okay, is that something that you were willing to fund at this point, sir?
You know, it's something, if this goes back to Public Works, that I would sit down with Public Works and have a discussion as to what Destination Rapid City would or would not do.
Okay, and is there any additional, looking at your plan here, is there any additional buildings going to be added if this plan was to go through? Are you going to add any more buildings to this area?
No.
Okay, so, and you're going to be tearing down the fencing that's currently there then?
If the project were to move forward with the full lot, yes, we would tear down the fencing and clean all that up.
And you would essentially be putting a parking lot where there's already asphalt, which is a tennis court right now, correctly?
That would be correct.
And plus another about half an acre?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and then if I look at this plan farther out, it appears to me that what you're essentially doing is building another park. With all the beautification you have going all the way out to I-190, it seems to be more, is there some pathways in there too?
Yes, there would be. There's pathways designed. Again, working into the future and a vision, there'd be pathways designed, bike path and so forth, yes.
Okay, so we're essentially taking by all accounts and by pictures, a dilapidated tennis court that's not getting a lot of use, a parking lot that's not being used for anything much more than a turnaround on Friday night, and adding another park people can use and giving some much-needed parking solution. I guess I understand, obviously, there's sensitivities to the how that area was created, but I don't see where we're losing any park space. It seems like we're cleaning up an area, making it a lot nicer than it was, and adding some much-needed parking, I guess. And we have somebody who's willing to put a large part of the bill and foot a large part of the bill for that. I'm failing to see the objections here, I guess, but that's all I have to say right now.
Alderman John Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And like Jerry Wright, I was here during the flood, and only by the grace of God, myself and my family are here now. Can I ask Suzanne a question? Susan Martley?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I find it really interesting looking at the minutes from the school board and the proposal that was made from them to the city. And I think the Friends of the Park is a very, very good group, a watchdog for this greenway of Rapid City. I think that a parking lot would be better than what we have right now, but a park would be even better than a parking lot. And we have a lot of parking lots that it looks to me like are being unused. And, you know, I know that Dan wants to have a parking lot there for the new Legacy Commons, and that does make sense. But the majority of the people that are going to be using Legacy Commons will probably be during the day when the Civic Center parking lot, a lot of times there's not a lot of people there during the summer. So I don't know. I've thought a lot about this, and I've read a lot on here, and I think there's a lot of good discussion. But once we start encroaching more on our parklands, we're not going to get them back. And as a memorial, that part of the Greenway is pretty important. You know, if you look at that part and up towards where the old Black Hills packing plant was, there was a tremendous amount of life that was lost between there and the Civic Center, including a couple of people that I went to school with. And I think that it's easy to say, I know, what the flood was like when you're not there, but I remember watching what happened that night and being a part of what happened that night. And I think that it's very important that we remember what happened that night, and we respect that area. So thank you very much for what you're doing. The proposal right now, I'm not going to accept it. I would love to see this just go back to Greenway. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
So before we proceed to the additional 4 council lights, Charlene, I'd like to get some clarification. Could you please read the motion? Because as I understand it, is to redo a surface lot that was built in the late 70s. It doesn't expand anything. If you could please read the motion.
The motion is City Council directs city staff to work with Destination Rapid City to develop a plan and recommended funding sources to restore and repair the existing vehicle parking lot at the Mount Rushmore Road tennis courts, including lighting and lighting under the Mount Rushmore Road Bridge for free public parking for Legacy Commons and other uses as appropriate, and to present their findings and recommendations to the May 13th Public Works Committee and May 19th City Council.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask a motion or a question of the motion maker. Jerry, if we could go to you real quick.
You may.
Richie,
You may.
Richie, this is commonly referred to as the lower turnaround. We're redoing the lower turnaround.
Correct.
Not adding anything. Your motion doesn't create any more encroachment. It's to redo the lower turnaround.
That's correct.
Which currently has approximately how many parking spaces?
85.
85?
85.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go to Brad Estes. Alderman Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, I'm not sure. Okay. I just want to, for my own benefit, this seems to be like the Dan Seffner parking lot, and I want to remind the council how we got here. If you recall, months ago, Destination Rapid City came to offer us $2 million of matching funds towards a parking. This council sent it to Public Works to review it. Mr. Waltersdorf came to Public Works and gave a presentation, and his exact presentation was this lot. Now, and with all due respect, the Friends of Rapid City Parks were there. We were not, Mr. Waltersdorf and nobody on the Public Works at that time were aware of any deals made by the with the school board and stuff. So I just want to bring everybody back up to date. This, that report or that deal by Mr. Waltersdorf never got presented to this full council. It only got, was only given to Public Works. I was personally, and I don't want to, I get a little bit disturbed. I don't want to get into a who the flood means more to kind of a deal, but I lost relatives in the flood. I remember, I lived in Wall, but I was here the next day. 14 years old, I put a water tank in the back of a dump truck, hauled a cat up here, and it was a tragedy for my family. So the flood means a hell of a lot to me too. We're not talking about building the structure in here. It's parking. And then having an opportunity to be involved in some of the talks about what we may or may not do at the Civic Center. Hear a lot of talk about, we got plenty of parking. Well, one of the major complaints we see at the Civic Center, as is, without any renovation, is there's a lack of parking. Now, if, in all the talks about, if we build or if we add, we're going to have to expand parking at that Civic Center. And I've heard talks about, you might build as much as, a 1,500 car ramp. Well, it doesn't make any sense to me to build all your parking for the demands of the new or the existing Civic Center over there. I think they should be strategically located throughout the community within walking distance, so that they can be used more than just at the peak times of the Civic Center, that they can be used downtown. And I thought this fit into that puzzle very well, especially when you talk about ramp structures, and that type of parking costs, $18,000 to $22,000 a spot. And this, this parking lot, the reduced version of 270 spots, the parking feature of it, you can do that for about $2,000 a spot. So I want to explain. That's why I
I said at Public Works, that's why I thought it was a good deal. I think it's a good deal. You know, it helps, and I think in the name of parks, that the Legacy Commons and the functions at the Civic Center meet that just as much as a basketball gym at the Central High School does. I mean, I feel that should meet. I mean, if it was okay for the school, I think that the park-like features of the Civic Center and the Legacy Commons should meet that test. I'd gotten an email from Ms. Livingston about the stormwater, and I have full respect, but any new parking lots, keep this in mind, is if we repave this lot, it's built with 1970s design. The water, the overflow, it's just going to flow right in the creek. Any new parking lot will be designed to today's new standards. You know, I don't turn a blind eye to the stormwater plan. I guess if I have any other notes. Anyway, I just, you know, Dan Seffner's a grown man. He doesn't need me to defend him, but this isn't his deal. This lot was what our Public Works guy came up with at our request for him to come up with a plan. So with that, I will yield the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Estes. We'll now go to Alderman Steve Laurenti. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I can, I'd like to ask our Public Works Director, Mr. Woltersdorf, a question, please.
You may.
Thank you. Terry, since this was sent back and a plan was devised, can you please answer if the part of the discussion was ever the overflow parking from the Civic Center east of 5th Street? Was that ever part of the discussion?
Thank you. No, the overflow parking really wasn't the primary focus point that we had when we brought the proposal forward. You know, obviously it seems to somewhat fit into the puzzle, but our primary focus from a public works standpoint was focusing on the task at hand, which was what do we do with the $2 million offer from Destination Rapid City to assist with parking in the downtown area. So that really is the genesis, and that is what brought this forward originally. Now, as we went through the design considerations, obviously the Legacy Commons park area certainly became focal to our discussion there, because obviously there's really not sufficient parking in the direct vicinity of that area. But again, our primary focus originally was focusing on the downtown parking area.
One last question, if I can, if you will, Mr. Woltersdorf. That parking lot, do you have some idea of the one east of 5th Street utilized its overflow parking for the Civic Center? How many parking spots are there? Do you have some idea?
I don't. I would guess that in the neighborhood of probably 800 to 1,000, I would think.
Okay. And I'm hoping one of my colleagues will amend the motion. I would really honestly, I think we're moving too quickly. We're looking at a parking lot that has approximately 800 or more parking spots, and we're wanting to resurface a spot that has approximately a tenth of that. And I'm just hoping that we would be wiser to pull back a bit and include sending back to staff the idea of utilizing that very underutilized parking spot or parking lot, which has 10 times the parking spots, which is generally just as close to the downtown area. That I agree, let's send it back to staff, but let's leave it a little more open to include an extremely large parking lot, including a parking lot that's north of the Journey Museum, which is underutilized. Granted, that's further away, but that parking lot east of 5th Street is very large, and I think we all drive by that often. We know it's very underutilized, and we're talking 10 times the parking spots. This parking area that we're talking about here, and the fact that there was an agreement made with the school board that be part of the compromise, that go back to the Greenway, it's very surprising to me that we would decide not to do that. It's amazing to me that a previous council was involved and we're not going to follow that, because I hear it used often on the dais by many of us that previous councils have done certain things and we should honor that because They're part of what we're representing now, which is the city government for the citizens. Beyond that, the other problem I have with this parking lot is we all understand that if we let them invest money into that parking lot, which has a very few spots, that it makes it much more difficult for us to turn and go a different direction. If we allow them to sink money into it, we all know what that means. That's the beginning of keeping that there. And the reality is it should be a green area. We all should support that. You've heard some people here tonight talk about the flood and the fact that we should probably stay out of the floodplain. And here we have an opportunity to do the right thing, yet what we want to do is have somebody invest some money in an area to improve a parking lot, but the reality is we should make it green area again, I think, and look at that parking lot east of 5th Street, which has so much more parking capacity and is generally as close to the downtown. I don't understand why that can't be part of this motion, and I'm hoping there'll be an amendment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pretty comfortable with this motion that's on the floor right now. I've got Mr. Laurenti's right. We should also be investigating what to do with that parking by across from the Civic Center off of 5th Street. The Journey parking, Ada's supposed to come into there, so we need to keep that aside for that. It's so easy to look at this both ways because you look and you see there's pavement down already. So it's like, what's the big whoop to just, make it a little bit bigger? I mean, it's real easy to see that. But the problem is that it's very, very easy to keep encroaching onto the park. They were promised, I guess, in 2009 that perhaps the tennis court and I guess the parking lot too would be turned into Greenway, back into Greenway for compromises that were made for the high school. And it's easy to say it's only a half acre more. Look how much more parkland we have. It's just a little bit more. And the problem is that it's always just a little bit more. It's like we had hoped we'd put that swimming pool between the buildings, but that became, not feasible. So now we've got it a little more space, and it's always just a little bit more. So we have to be cautious about that. I do think also that before we would do any kind of shuttle, that we should do a pilot program to see if it's feasible. I also think that the council should really think about moving our employees' parking from outside the building if we're going to do a shuttle, because if we work for the citizens, then we work for the citizens, and to give them priority for parking. I know I'm not going to be very popular, and people will be glad to see me going, but it does make sense that perhaps the city should bite the bullet and move our employees off site, except for a few very important people, of course. But I mean, really, it's a realistic thing that we should be looking at. And so anyway, right now I'm comfortable with, even though that lot I'm sure was told it would be going to Greenway, that it makes enough sense to me to keep it since it's there already. But I do think we need to be very careful. And we're not approving it tonight. We're just saying, talk about it. Destination Rapid City can say, look at it and say that's not worth what they want to do. We can come back and say it's not what we want to do, but I will support the motion tonight. But thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll go to Alderman Bill Clayton. Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll try to be quick. I hope everybody who's watching and listening understands that this is an emotionally charged issue, and there's no easy way to flip a coin and please everybody. There certainly isn't. And it's resoundingly difficult to sit up here and listen to all the testimony and everything that everybody has to say, try to jot a couple of notes, and then get your thoughts together and sound somewhat intelligent when you're finally on the microphone. So I'm making excuses if I'm not intelligent. But there's a lot of speculation that gets wrapped around in this. You know, one is if we endeavor to put this entire area back in the greenway, we hear so many times up here about kicking the can down the road, and this is a can that's been kicked down the road for many, many years. And the question is, will we ever find the money to return it all to Greenway, to tear the unsightly parking lot and the tennis court out of there and make something beautiful out of it? One of the things that I haven't heard said tonight is even if we put lights under the bridge that goes underneath 8th Street, I don't know how many of you people have been on that thing year-round. I used to ride bicycles a lot on the bike path, and there are times during high water conditions where the walkway under there is underwater. So we would not only need a shuttle, we'd need a rowboat to take you from one side to the other. And I can't at all envision people walking across 8th Street, it's dangerous, or walking across Omaha, that's doubly dangerous because it's wider. So if we increase pedestrian traffic down there, it's a bad idea. And hopefully before anybody thinks I'm taking sides, I just want you to know I'm wrestling with everything that's been presented because I see good and bad on both sides. I speculate that if we could wave a magic wand and return it to park area right now, if we could take that beautiful drawing that Dan Seffner showed us, take the parking lots out of it, make it all park and make it all beautiful the way it is, would people really utilize it? Because Memorial Park seems to be more centralized, and people tend not many times to venture into the periphery and go that further distance to go see the outer edges of a park. I agree we need parking to get to downtown, and I like choices, quite frankly. When the fair is here in town, I like to park on the south side of the fairgrounds rather than north side. It's just personal preference. And I think you would find some people would like to be a little bit further to the west instead of over there by 5th Street or over by the Journey Museum. So where do we go? You know, I mean, how do we satisfy everybody because the two sides are vastly far apart? I don't at all agree with trying to put a Band-Aid on the present parking lot that's there. I think that's just money thrown away. And it leaves us, once again, with an unusable tennis court. What in the heck do we do with that? So I would not be at all in favor of putting any kind of a Band-Aid fix on that parking lot. I would, however, be supportive of trying, at least temporarily, you know, we've had business owners stand here before us and say, we will enforce that our employees use these parking lots and free up the parking spaces downtown for the business patrons. And I think since we have two viable parking lots, if we were going to try some sort of a shuttle service, maybe it's time to flip that switch and utilize that, at least temporarily, and answer the question that right now is speculative. If we had a parking lot, will they use it? Well, we do have some parking lots already built, already there, already available. Let's find out, will they use it? And I think it gives us more meat to come back with, to have meaningful discussions to determine how should we proceed based on the fact that now we've validated whether or not the people of Rapid City, the business people downtown, would in fact use those. Dan, I love your idea, and you're one of my heroes, you know, because you're always positive, you're always thinking about not you, but Rapid City, and I like that. And you're always willing to step up, checkbook in hand, and spend some money to make it happen. And I like what you've presented, I really do. I hear both sides, however, and I think at this point, I agree with what Alderman Laurenti said, is maybe we're moving a little bit too fast to try to make a permanent decision and maybe we should try something that's temporary in nature, gives us a taste of what might be to come without obligating funds, without taking away more parkland. It seems to be a winning situation, at least in my mind. And with that, I'll rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We'll go to Alderwoman Amanda Scott. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted for clarification points. As Alderman Clayton said, you know, this is a really good discussion because we're hearing both sides of the issue here, and it is an emotional issue. A couple points that I want to bring up is, number one, there has been no funding sources identified. That's part of the motion. When you're dealing with private funds versus public funds, I just want to point out that that's what Destination Rapid City has been able to accomplish, is that it was done with private funds, not taxpayers' money. When you're going to use private funds, you sometimes have to give a little. I mean, you know, they've got a vision, and you can't just rewrite it and say, because I've heard this from the parks people, and I get it, but, well, we just want them to do the beautification and then leave it alone. Well, if there's another motivation of having a parking lot for the Legacy Commons, for the little plot pods and the little playground area, you have to be willing to give a little if you want somebody else to pay the ticket at the end of the day. So just a clarification on that point, because I truly do believe, and staff hates it when I call on them, so I'm not going to call on anybody tonight, but I truly do believe that the city has no funds for a parking lot at this point. So basically what we're looking at is, if we were looking at parking areas anyplace else, or trying to enlarge parking areas or provide parking areas, the city is tapped out. We have no funds, okay? And then just wanted that clarification. And then Mr. Safner was using the term half acre, and just for reference, I just wanted to use like something that I get. Generally, an acre is 208 feet by 208 feet. So when you're dealing with a half an acre, it's roughly 100 by 200 feet, to give you an idea of what we're talking about for the expansion of the pavement. It'd be roughly about 100 to 200 over what's existing there, if I understood Mr. Safner correctly. And Mayor, may I ask Mr. Safner one question? Sure. Thank you. And I am done it right after this question.
Thanks, Amanda.
Dan, I heard you say in your presentation that an option is to do nothing. And so I'm just trying to clarify what I'm hearing up here is that the motion on the floor is to send this back and allow Destination Rapid City and city staff to kind of vet out some other options of private funds and what can be done and what both sides can come to an agreement with. What I'm hearing is do nothing. So I just want to ask you, what is your preference tonight? Do you, with listening to the objections, do you want to do nothing at this point and take a look at it in a little while, or would you like to see this motion go through to continue working with city staff?
I'd like to see the motion go through to continue working with city staff.
Thank you, because that is my preference. I'd like to see this continue going. We're not approving anything tonight. It would still have to come back before city council. I'm in support of this motion. Thank you, Dan. I yield the floor.
Thank you, Amanda. We'll now go to Alderwoman Charity Doyle. Charity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have questions for Mr. Sefner and Mr. Bigler, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sefner, the $2 million that was originally offered up by DRC, is that still on the table?
The $2 million in our agreement was on the table for downtown parking, and that was in between 5th Street and 9th Street, if I remember right, and Omaha and Quincy.
Okay, so this
the $2
falls
million
outside of
is
that.
still on the table. That expires as of June 1. So this is a complete separate project from the $2 million.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Bigler, if I may? I have often heard in my 3 years on the council that we have more green space per capita than any other city in the nation. Is that a true statement?
Well, I don't know about any other city, but most cities, yes, that is a true statement.
Okay, and can you give us some kind of a way to understand what that means as far as how much we have per capita?
Well, I don't have that figure in front of me, no, but I know most cities would be very envious of us to have the amount of green space that we have. It is, I've been in many different cities, and some areas do very well with green space and bike paths and converting railways and aquatic corridors into usable green space. Rapid City has really gone above and beyond that and has done a remarkable job in setting aside green space for the public.
Okay. Where at in the parks plan would refurbishing this West Memorial Park be? And I know I've been going after you for a while now on Robbinsdale Park, but this one is it's smaller, but it's in equal disrepair.
It is, and with, I think, every other department, the needs outweigh the funds that we have, and we have about 1,700 acres of parkland, and we have parks that are in similar conditions. Some of them have been waiting for repairs for a long time as well. This site, I'll be honest, has not been a priority, as high a priority as some of the other park sites.
Okay, thank you. And when we look at the pictures, I see a big sinkhole forming right in the middle of that parking lot. And so, I mean, as long as it's heading in that direction, it's going to continue to serve the purpose of being the lower turnaround and a place where people congregate and maybe do things that we don't particularly want them doing in the parks. I remember Beautification Committee come into CIP years ago and being highly frustrated that this was one of the priority areas for them and just having no funding to do it. So just to reiterate what Alderwoman Scott said, I think that the conversation might be a little bit different if there were private funds on the table for this area. Right now, I don't like the option of doing nothing because I think it's embarrassing, quite honestly, to have that be in the heart of our city where millions of tourists go by, every day, every season. And I think it's an insult to Memorial Park, the condition that it's in now. So I think any way we can figure out to bring that area into a healthy state, no matter what that is, I think is a good conversation to have. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Charity, and we'll now go to Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess we haven't talked enough on the subject, but something that just keeps getting lost in this discussion is that one point I brought up before, and Mr. Estes kind of reiterated, Mr. Clayton, is this area right now is one of the major entry points into our city for visitors. Exit I-190. They come in there in that corner. I mean, I don't notice it because I don't live here. I mean, I live here. I don't really pay attention to it anymore. But it's not like it's a beautiful place to stare at. It's a field. And we're talking about taking it and making it a really beautiful, I mean, the plan I looked at makes a really nice, a park. I mean, it's going to be a park. That's what the friends of the park. I mean, it seems like you would be wanting another park like this, a beautiful park that's going to be showing off our showcase for our city. When people drive in here and the visitors see it, there it is right there. And you're talking about adding some parking spaces. Now, I'm going to probably get in trouble for this, but I don't really care. We don't have a real big problem for parking in this city. I don't think as much as we have a walking problem. No one wants to sit and walk. I mean, you go down east of 5th Street and you can get a place to park. I can pretty much guarantee it. Just no one wants to walk 2 blocks to do it. So what we need is the perception of being reality. We need a place to put all these employees. And I'm sure Mr. Sefner took that into account when he came up with this idea. He didn't do it by himself. I'm sure he's talked to all the business members downtown. And they've come up with a place to put our employees to park. People that work downtown, they can park downtown, and they don't have to run every 5 minutes, every 2 hours and move their car because they won't want to get a ticket. So people can actually be parked over in a parking spot. They have a shuttle that takes them to their place of business, and all the people who want to come and do business downtown can park better, more or less, park right where they want to park. They don't have to walk so far, and people don't have to get tickets all the time. Now, it's probably hurt our ticket revenue sources a little bit, but hey. But the fact of the matter is, this, to me, is a great idea. I mean, I think it's something that progressive kind of forward thinking we need in this community more of. And I really don't understand all the objections. We're not putting any more buildings in there, so it's not like it's a big, safety hazard for anybody. We're taking down a dilapidated tennis court with fences that are not in good repair and, potential obstructions for whatever situation might come along. I fully appreciate the fact that this is a memorial place, but I mean, I think by beautifying it and making it more presentable, and visitors coming in, they'll see that and say, wow, what a nice entrance into this city. And we have people who are stepping up and willing to spend $500,000, perhaps even more, if the money becomes available soon. I just have a hard time understanding why we can't at least go forward with this and start in the right positive direction. And I think resurfacing is a good start, because that's part of the plan now. So that's just my point. I guess I've made it enough times, but that's really where I'm trying to get my mind around any objection to this.
Thank you, Chad. We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
A parking lot, not a very glorious thing, but, you know, to put some people at ease, the discussion we had this afternoon, and I wish we would have had more time to do this, was not a Band-Aid fix, but really the curb and gutter's in good shape for the most part. There are existing lights there. They may have to have conduit and new wiring, but really all we're talking about is taking up the old asphalt and replacing it. And this is a parking lot that we own, that we can use. It'll contribute to Legacy Park and other uses within the area. It's not an expansion. It's fixing something that's become an eyesore in a disgraceful condition. And we're respecting the issues that are being brought to us by Friends of the Park, and I think that we can discuss those later as resolve the rest of the issues. Is, do we want more parking there or do we not? And how do we finish this end of Memorial Park? But I do ask council support to at least get this parking lot fixed, so when Legacy Park comes online, we have a parking lot that looks appropriate for the facilities that are being brought to us, and they're not in such a disgraceful condition. So I do ask for support of at least the motion on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Wright. We'll go to Alderman Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll try to keep this short. As a minimum, I will support this motion, but I just wanted to, you know, we got a little different situation in here because we have the Holiday Inn, you have the Civic Center, you have Central High School, and if all those were private enterprises and they all had to go get building permits and have the parking requirements required by our city, I'll bet you we're short. You know, you all talk about driving by these lots and they're empty. You ought to be in my shoes, try to build private sector and then live with the parking requirements of this city. You know, my parking lots are half empty half the time, but I have to abide by their formula. You know, and you add to that the fact that it's adjacent, and we're trying to train people. The Destination Rapid City and the Promenade and this Legacy Commons, we're trying to teach people to cross the Great Wall of Omaha Street. You know, we've got this promenade from the Dakota School all the way to the Civic Center, and we're trying to teach people. But then the dynamic we have downtown is that people can build, and we're rejuvenating downtown, but they don't have to follow any of the parking guidelines. So nobody that goes downtown has to supply or build a single spot. So, you know, I get it when you drive by and you go, the parking lot's empty. But parking lots are designed for peak. And at peak, we're short parking. And it's just that simple. And again, I get the line in the sand by the people of the parks in Alderman Lorente. I understand what you're saying about honoring, but it wasn't a council. It's not any council minutes. I don't think at least I should say, I don't think you can find that we're going against any action of a previous council. So it doesn't ease your mind at all, but I guess that's where I feel on that. I yield.
Thank you. We'll go to Alderman John Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This has been a great discussion, and I kind of figured it would be tonight. I find this very interesting that we're asked to give a little on this specific parking lot and also that there's not enough parking downtown right now, so we need to expand or we need to fix this parking lot. But 10 years from now, parking is going to be even worse. So how much more of the park system are we going to take up? Are we going to have parking lot from Mountain View to this fairgrounds? What are we going to do as the city grows? Are we going to keep encroaching on our green space? We got a unique opportunity here to actually give a little bit back for a change. I mean, you're worried about people coming into Rapid and this being beautiful. Just because there isn't a parking lot there doesn't mean we can't make it beautiful. We could actually make it more beautiful without a parking lot. So that's all I have to say. I hope that we actually do the right thing for a change and turn this back into park system. So thank you very much.
Any further discussion on the motion? Everyone understands the motion on item 50. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, please.
Peterson. Lewis. Doyle. Wright.
Aye.
Scott. Nordstrom. Roberts. Clayton. Lorente. Estes.
Motion carries. Item number 51. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 51 is the Canyon Lake Project presented by Ev Hoyt, and I move to acknowledge the report, and if I may, hold the floor.
We have a motion to acknowledge the report by Nordstrom and a second by Lewis.
Mayor, if I may update Mr. Hoyt, just for information, you don't need to come up to the podium. I just wanted to update you and give you a little bit additional information. And I thank you very much for you and Mr. Rogers making the presentations that you did. I am also on the hunt for additional funding, so because I don't believe we have the additional $60,000 to match what you're suggesting. So I am on the hunt to see if I can come up with at least a portion of that $60,000. And so we've got a little time, and if you would like to help me and assist me in that hunt, I'll take every bit of volunteering that we can get on this project. So that's just a clarification for Mr. Hoyt. But that's my motion, is to acknowledge the report.
Public Works Director Terry Waltersdorf for an update on this issue and his suggestion.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so everybody's clear as far as construction schedule, the contractor is scheduled to start construction again, probably starting in September. So we really won't start draining the lake until after Labor Day. So we certainly are not in a rush to come up with a funding source here. 90-day period should be fine as long as we know what we're going to do before we start the construction in September. That's the primary thing. The other thing I do want to clarify is that there's been some reference to the $39,000 left over from the bypass project that was done. Keep in mind the $39,000 is not available anymore. That was part of the 2005 round of Vision funds. That project was finalized, and any money left over went back into the Vision fund and has since been allocated out. So that $39,000 is not in existence. So really what we're talking about, their request really is for $100,000 of additional funds.
Okay. Richie? You recognize that your motion is to acknowledge.
That's
a
correct.
A motion to acknowledge does.
And I apologize. I should have had Terry give that report anyway, because I thank you for that report and getting us an update. But we are on the hunt to see if we can come up with some additional funding for that. So again, if you would accept my challenge to volunteer to help me find that additional $60,000, I would take it. Thank you.
We'll go to John Roberts. Alderman Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask Terry another question? Terry, when was the last time that Canyon Lake was cleaned out? I can't remember. I'm trying to think.
I think Tim Rogers is right. It was about 15 years ago, if I remember right.
And do you remember how much they cleaned out at that time? 50%, 75%, 80%, 95%?
Yeah, I
20%?
don't recall. I don't have those numbers with me.
If memory serves me right, we didn't do what we should have done at the time. And it filled up a little quicker than what we were thinking. My recommendation on this, hopefully, is once we find all the funding we need from the Vision Fund for Horseman Pool, I'm hoping that there's a little bit of money left over, because I would love to see this done and done the right way. Because if we don't, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to be in the same boat we're in right now. And I think, as a council, I think that it's very important for us, if we're going to do a project, to do it as well as we can, as well as the funding allows us. So as long as we can find funding, I think we should find as much as we can to do as much of the project as we can. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a substitute motion to direct staff to continue this item for 90 days and direct staff to look for alternative funding sources. Is that basically what we talked about, Terry?
We have a motion by Lewis and a second by Peterson.
And I
We're
just-
now on the substitute motion. You still have the floor.
Yeah, and I just want to I was a little quick on my acknowledgement. I wasn't listening to Richie as close as I should have about just acknowledging it. And I meant to offer that motion right away. So obviously, as Mr. Waltersdorf pointed out in agenda review this morning, you know, this is the time to do it if you're going to do it when it's drained. It's obviously the most cost effective and makes the most sense. So we're in there. It's kind of like when you're dropping a transmission, you replace the clutch at the same time. You're there. Might as well take care of it. So I think it's the same thing we want to do right now and make sure we get it taken care of and done right if we can find the funding, which I hope we can. So that's my motion. Thank you.
Alderman Brad Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the Alderman making the amended motion. I can support that. And you took a little bit of the wind out of my sails, Terry, when you told me we lost 39,000. But I still think looking for. I think doing this for 90 days is more proactive on trying to round up the funding. And I agree with everybody that while this thing's drained, this is the time to do it, and just makes the lake, makes the lake more usable for everybody. And barring an event that would create it to silt up faster, it'll just hopefully it'll be 20 years plus before it has to be drained the next time. Then. But I will support the Lewis motion. Thanks.
Alderwoman Amanda Scott. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, Terry, since you brought up that, the figures that were presented to us on the diagram said that $100,000 was being donated by West River Water District, if I remember that correctly, and
Western Dakota Development
Western
Water
Dakota
District.
Water Development District, and that $40,000 was already committed on the paper, and that is the $40,000, Mr. Waltersdorf, you're referring to, is no longer committed because it was in a vision fund from in the past. Am I correct?
That is correct. The $100,000 is allocated towards sediment removal. We're using that as part of the current contract amount. The $40,000 that they were referencing was leftover money from that 2005 round of Vision Fund projects.
And then their presentation, they were saying that $40,000 that in their mind was still committed, that is not. Then they were also asking for matching funds of $60,000, and that's where you're coming up, adding those two together of your $100,000.
That's correct.
Right. And the project is still $260,000 in order to take care of the blue and the yellow shaded areas as presented based on their estimates.
Yeah, I think that's right. And their numbers are pretty accurate. Obviously, we would have to work out a change order with the contractor. We're probably not going to get the same contract price that we have right now because we're in a fairly isolated area in the center part of the lake. We were attempting to dredge out the thicker areas of sediment where it was 2 to 3 feet deep. We weren't really concentrating on those areas along the shoreline that are 6 to 8 inches deep. But we certainly understand their concerns, and we've been discussing with the contractor about relocating some of that sediment removal. So if we can come up with the additional funds, probably through the Vision Fund, we would certainly do everything we can to do the additional sediment removal.
Thank you. And then just as a cheerleading point here, we are sitting in April, and the sales tax income has come in for the first 2 months, I believe. There may be a payment that hasn't actually been received by the city. But the cheerleading side of me wants to say that since this project is not going to be affected until after September, when the prime time to dredge this stuff out is when we redo the Canyon Lake spillway at that point. Let's invite all of our taxpayers, sales taxpayers in, our visitors, and let's welcome them with open arms, and I think we might be able to come up with those funds. So having the extra time to come up and take a look and look where our financing is in another 90 days may give us a much clearer picture. So thank you. I'm in support of this motion.
Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Mr. Hoyt and his group about bringing money to the city. It's something we don't often get, and encouraging us to do the right thing and utilize that and get more bang for our buck by utilizing that. And so you also still have another 90 days for more. So we'll look forward to revisiting it at that time. Thank you.
Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. Since I was the original motion maker, and I can support the Lewis amendment to this motion. So, Terry, will this, if Mr. Walterstorff, if I may, just to make sure you're okay with the 90-day time frame on this motion?
Yeah, actually, 90 days will work good for us. That'll get us towards the tail end of July. And I think as maybe Alderman Roberts mentioned, we've got several projects that will be coming near the end on, and we'll also have the bids open hopefully for the Horseman project. So we'll know where we're sitting a little better financially with this Vision Fund really coming into the last year of construction.
So this will give you enough lead time to get into the bidding process for this additional portion of the project as well, meaning that the dredging would have to be a change order.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Everyone understands the motion.
Mayor?
All in favor say aye.
Mayor, may I clarify the dates? Are we wanting to bring this back on July 21st council, or do you want to take it back to the July 15th Public Works first?
July 15 is the intent of the motion maker.
Thank you.
Let's do the vote again. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Item number 52, Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 52 is the citywide cash handling audit report. And this audit was approved by Compass Committee on January 13, 2014. Compass Committee Chairman Colin Schmidt and Chief Auditor Cale Kellen make a motion to release the audit. Is that correct? Is that the correct motion we're looking for?
A motion by Lewis and a second by Nordstrom to release the audit. So that they can be published. Does that mean it's coming back to council committee?
Sure. I don't know.
Up to
We
you,
didn't
Wade.
discuss this at agenda review, so.
Okay, we'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. We received word from Colleen Schmidt, who is the chairman of the Compass Committee, and unfortunately, family had pulled her out of town tonight. She and the staff auditor, Kellen Kelly, had prepared a presentation to kind of explain the audit, actually both of these audits, and what will be done with the council approval is if these audits are released tonight, they will be published to the public so that they will become public documents at that time. And the chairman and the staff auditor will be back at the second council meeting in May to give the presentations. Thank you, Mayor.
Everyone understands the motion on item 52. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 53, Chad.
Item 53 is the airport car rental and parking contracts audit report, and I make a motion to release this audit as well.
Second.
Motion by Lewis, second by Doyle to release this audit as well. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on public hearing items 54 through 63. Public hearing is now open for these items. I do not have any speaker request forms. Have I missed anyone? Items 54 through 63. Public comment is now closed. We're on consent public hearing items 54 through 62. We will take those all at once per the recommendations in each item. Do we have a motion to approve 54 through 62? We have a motion by Lewis, second by Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are now on item number 63. Richie, can you read this into the record for us? Alderman Nordstrom. Item 63.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 63 is to approve resolution 2014-044 to amend the comprehensive plan by adopting Plan Rapid City, Rapid City's comprehensive plan. I move to approve.
Motion by Nordstrom, second by Lewis to approve. We'll go to Alderman Jerry Wright. Jerry.
Thank you, Mayor. Brett, as we know, we received a letter from Lazy P6 expressing concern about the land use recommendations from the comp plan versus the land use that they've somewhat developed their properties on, and you and I discussed that. Would you explain for the council and the city and citizens the bearing on this issue and how it will affect these property owners?
Yeah, the property in question would be at the intersection of Fifth Avenue and Catron. Specifically, it would be the south and eastern corner. Lazy P is requesting that a portion of that corner be designated strictly for commercial development. If you look at the proposed land use map, what you'll see is that that side of the eastern side of Fifth Avenue is designated for industrial development. However, there is what we call an activity node also at that intersection. With the new plan, the activity node allows Lazy P6 to develop commercially at that corner. What we would need to see from them is a specific rezoning plan or a building permit that would show commercial development. The plan would allow them to expand commercial development at that corner. The remainder of the property adjacent to the landfill would be industrial. And considering what's being constructed there, which is essentially cold storage, warehouse buildings, mini storage, actually the industrial designation works really quite well for them.
So the petitioner, or excuse me, the citizen or the developer can come in with reasonable statements and get the zoning that they wish because of that. And also, if for some reason they want to go to a different zoning, light industrial, they could present their case and possibly get approval also, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I think they're set up really very well. The primary commercial corner is set for them. I mean, essentially, they can develop that commercially. I think the balance of the property adjacent to the landfill is probably going to continue to work best for them as industrial, and that's what the designation is. But if they change their minds, it would be like anyone else in the city. They could come to us with an alternate proposal for zoning, and that comes to council. If you approve the rezoning, then we would amend the comprehensive plan as necessary.
Thank you, Brett.
Further discussion will go to Alderman Richie Nordstrom. Richie.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, let me thank the Clarion Group for that did the comprehensive study, that put a very fine report together, and it's very easy reading. You put it down in layman's terms that even I can understand. So, and that's saying a lot, really. And so I really appreciate what you've done. And then also to Brett and his staff, to Brett Limbaugh and his staff for coming up with this comprehensive plan. Now the challenge is going to be putting on to the city council about how to coming up with funding for this to do it properly and do it appropriately. And with the thoughts that you put into the implementation portion and the toolbox that we have available to us and the instruments that can be utilized now and then in future planning, I need a little bit more orientation on that, and plus the public needs a little better understanding how these additional resources can be used to actually fund this plan. That'll be needing some other explanation. And then I also just wanted to share with the public that this plan is not stopping it and going onto the shelf. So if the public wants to make additional comments, sees some additional things on there, they can make those suggestions and recommendations to our planning staff. And I want to say at this time it'll be quarterly updates, approximately a quarterly update, so we can still get those public comments to the comprehensive plan. And again, I just can't thank everybody enough for all the participation and the hard work behind the scenes that came forward with this excellent product. Thank you. Yield the floor.
Thank you, Richie. And before we proceed to the vote on this, I just want to underscore what Richie said and how important this vote is tonight. There's only four times since 1882 where the City Council has voted to implement a new comprehensive plan: 1949, 1964, 1981, and tonight. This is a big deal. And we'll ignore Chad Lewis's comment that Jerry Wright was here for the first vote in 1940. All of them. Okay, you weren't here for the. All right.
It's all true.
So, anyway, all joking aside, this is a very, very important vote, and I want to thank everyone for their involvement in this, and I especially want to thank Clarion and our dedicated staff, Brett Limbaugh and Vicki Fisher, and you have many of your and Patsy Horton. There's a number of people that were involved in this. All of the city departments were involved in this. All of the council was involved in this. So I want to thank everyone for their work. We are not in a rush to approve this tonight. If there's concerns, you can continue it and have further discussion. I don't see a need for continuation, but please understand we want to get this right, and so we don't want anybody to feel rushed. We know that we have time to discuss it if anybody else wants to discuss it further tonight or continue it, but this is one of the most important votes that this council will ever cast. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, okay. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Item 64 is the bill list. We'll go to our Deputy Finance Officer, Tracy Davis.
As the bill list was presented to you, it's the total amount of $4,895,985.31. There are no additions.
Motion by Roberts, second by Laurenti. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. 8:46 p.m. Have a good evening, everyone.
Anybody interested in going to Armadillo?